Greetings, everyone. My name is Coach Amber McAuley, and I'm very excited to be joined by my beloved spouse, Gordon Stevens, who's joining me for this very special video blog that is going to speak to our conversation and our learnings around the term autopilot and its use in the industry of mindfulness. And Gordon is a commercial pilot, so he's got a lot to say about the technicalities around autopilot. And we wanted to start off with a short video today that just speaks to the basics of autopilot. So, honey, can you please give us a general overview of your experience in working with autopilot?
Sure, I can start. And I think I might start by mentioning that there are a lot of airplanes in Canada that are used without any autopilots at all. There's no autopilots in a lot of airplanes. Anything on floats or skis, certainly, and any airplane that's based north of, say, 50 degrees north. Anything north of like major cities. A lot of smaller airplanes don't have any autopilots at all. So in the cases of these smaller aircraft, the pilots end up, I shouldn't say they end up, but they are navigating a lot of the times with maps on their laps like this. Like they'll be holding a map and orienting it based on the direction they're going and changing the direction that they're holding the map based on the direction they're going, things like this. Very common, especially in float planes. Of which there are a lot of in Canada. Now, having said all that, autopilots, the early autopilot systems, and I use the term systems loosely, but the early autopilots in commercial aircraft were very rudimentary, very crude. They served a very simple function, which was to allow the pilot to look at their map, to navigate and turn their map around, flip it over, fold it, whatever. You end up, airplanes are relatively fast, so even old airplanes are relatively fast, so pilots end up changing this map all the time, and it can be highly cognitively demanding to be monitoring an instrument panel and continuously flying this machine while looking down at this map and moving this map around as they needed to. So the earliest, simplest autopilot systems were made to literally just hold a compass heading, hold one specific direction through the air, and that's the pro of it in terms of pro cons. The limitation, the con side, was that these autopilot systems would not make any, they could not compensate for any changes. So they would hold this heading no matter what happened. And I mean, a wind change would be a great example where it would make no difference to the autopilot as far as it was concerned. It was doing its job, and it was doing its job, which was to hold this heading. But a wind change could have a really negative impact on what the pilot was intending to do if they weren't paying attention. So they have to, pilots, while they were able to then navigate with their maps, they had to also continuously pay attention to this autopilot's performance and being aware of its limitations, making sure that it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. And the pilot would have to make compensations for wind changes in this case. How's that for a start?
I think it's a good start, and I hear you speaking to like a couple of, several pieces that feed into our interpretation, like the general public, people who don't fly airplanes, and our interpretation of what autopilot is. So aside from my own interpretation, I've used this term for years and years. while teaching mindfulness classes. And I think I've really taken for granted that we all understand the term autopilot in the same way. And I investigated this a little bit recently because of our conversation, and I asked some friends, family, and colleagues, when you hear the term autopilot, what do you think of? And I wrote a few examples down just for the purpose of this video. One person said that it makes slight corrections to account for wind conditions, actually, specifically.
Oh, really?
I was laughing as you were, laughing inside as you were talking, because that's almost exactly the opposite of what you said. Mm-hmm. Another person, and actually a few people, talked about comparing it to cruise control in a car. Someone said that it's a computer running the airplane. And the last example I pulled was it allows pilots to rest. And I think those examples really speak to the spectrum of like our understanding as the general public. Some of them, honey, I think some of them are drawing small but possible parallels between autopilot and human behavior. Some of them not so much. And we're just kind of dipping our toes into it today in this video. But another thing that stands out for me is in having these conversations with you and now opening it up, I'm starting to wonder if we're talking about autopilot from comparing my behavior to the pilot person flying the airplane, or if I'm comparing my behavior to the actual airplane's behavior in autopilot.
You mean
Does that make sense?
You mean like comparing our mindless behavior to that behavior of a pilot, or comparing our mindless behavior to that behavior, the actual autopilot itself? That's what you mean?
Yeah, which really complicates things a lot more, right? Like if I'm saying autopilot and my mindlessness, comparing it to, the human pilot of an airplane, and another person is thinking of my mindless behavior in comparison to the mindlessness of the airplane moving on its trajectory without any consideration of the variables, those are completely different stories.
Yes, I would agree.
So let's maybe leave it there and put it out to our viewers to kind of chime in. Like when you're thinking of autopilot, does it relate to mindless behavior? Yes or no? Why or why not? And would you compare it more to the actual human pilot's behavior when that system is engaged, or to the mechanism of the airplane when that system is engaged? Why and why not? Okay.
I like it.
I like it too. So viewers, please chime in. We would love to hear from you while we put our thoughts together for the next section of our video. And we look forward to you joining us in the future. Any final thoughts, honey?
No, honey, that's great.
All right. Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.